Tim and Eve Austin joining us actually on this side of the world. They are, bless their hearts, currently sweltering in the heat of Turkey right now. We're in the middle of a heat wave, and they're with us in it right now. But I'll just say a little bit and then hand it over to them. Tim and Eve are experienced global nomads themselves, and they have, both of them, between them, have a lot of both professional and personal experience in what we're talking about tonight and in everything that comes along with being a global nomad. Tim is a certified life and leadership coach, and Eve is a licensed marital therapist, marriage and family therapist. And so they do this professionally. They help workers and others professionally. But again, their personal experience is pretty boundless as well. And I'll let them tell you a little bit more about that. But really, really delighted to have them give us tonight some tools for transitions. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. Super good to be here with you guys. Yeah. So yeah, we're really thrilled to be doing this workshop with you guys. We call it a workshop or webinar. We've done it, Tools for Transitions. We put this together a few years ago to come alongside and resource global workers in different contexts. Mainly at that time, we were actually living here in Turkey. We no longer live in Turkey. We are in Northern California, but yeah, for this brief time, we happened to be in Turkey for a visit, and so it just worked out for us to do it on this side of the pond. So we're really thrilled to have this experience with y'all. Yeah, so maybe just a brief introduction. Yeah, this is us. So we're Tim and Eve Austin, and like Lisa said, we do this full time now as a coach and Eve as a counselor. Like many of you in this space or people you know in this space, we didn't start out this way. We started out more at the grassroots place in working and living in Central Asia for about 16 years, and then moving on to Turkey for several years before we returned to the States. And so we're in an interesting season right now, newly empty nesters, right? Mm-hmm. And also supporting aging parents and juggling a lot of different things, but and doing
grandparents.
And grandparents. Mm-hmm. We are grandparents, yes. Yeah. So it's a good season of life, but a lot of juggling, a lot of different things. But we originally started this to just equip ourselves more, to come alongside global workers on the field and to resource them and support them in various ways through retreats and workshops and one-on-one and lots of different ways. And so we found out we discovered along the way that just our heart and our passion. So we dove into this work full-time. Yeah, when we returned to the States, right? Mm-hmm. So you got anything to add to that? Kids are
this is exactly the 5-year mark for us of when we did move back from Turkey to NorCal. So it's been, this week in Istanbul has been really cool, like a full circle moment for us. All of our kids got to come, as well as our daughter-in-law. Our son got married 2 years ago, so this is her first time on this side with us. And yeah, so now the kids are 18 is our youngest, Emma, and then Luke and his wife are both 23, Luke and Maria, and our oldest, Adriana, is 26. So for all of us to all be here together, it's been sweet. So love being here.
That's right. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about transition this evening, or whatever time of day it is for you, and we want to just kind of start by setting our trajectory here. Where are we going? We want to reframe and approach transition seasons in ways that are purposeful, positive, and powerful. We believe that there is purpose in transition. There is ways to frame it that are positive and impactful in our own lives, in whatever season or stage of life we're in. growth potential, looking at what some of those growth potential areas are for us in transition seasons, or when we're facing, whether we're in a looming transition, we're looking ahead toward a transition, we're in the middle of one, or we're trying to make sense out of a past or current transition. Whatever place in there that we are, we believe that God has purpose, and we believe that He holds purpose in those times. So we're convinced of that, and we know that personally. We know that by experiencing that as we've walked alongside many people in transition. So we want to just and just to say, this is so much of this we can't claim credit for. We love to, as far as what you're going to hear tonight, we love to compile, we love to integrate so much of what other amazing people have brought to this space of member care, transition, and so much insight and ideas and thoughts out there. So we love to compile and integrate and throw in some of our own thoughts and ideas as well. So that'll be a mixture of that along the way here. We start out with this quote that we've come to just to kind of accentuate the purposefulness of transition and what it holds. And I'm trying to see if I can move.
I'll have to read it off my
Okay.
iPad, I think.
Okay. I got it. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, good. You want to read that?
I've taken thousands of people across the river, and to all of them, my river has been nothing but a hindrance on their journey. They have traveled from money and business to weddings and on pilgrimages. The river has been in their way, and the ferryman was there to take them quickly across the obstacle. However, amongst the thousands, there have been a few, 4 or 5, to whom the river was not an obstacle. They have heard its voice and listened to it, and the river has become holy to them, as it has to me. I always picture the Panj River. It's the river that is the southern border of Tajikistan, in between Tajikistan and Afghanistan. And we used to live in Tajikistan, but the ferry guy that used to take you across,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that river.
And it represents a lot of things. But when we think of transition, it does represent either an obstacle, maybe, or an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just leave it at that for now and see where we go. But how are we going to frame that when it comes to the transition season we find ourselves in? So we want to do a little bit of defining transition. And we just, as far as we just see 3 major basic components of transition. We all know there's those planned or proactive transition seasons we find ourselves in where we actually have initiated something on our part. We've planned, we've purposefully gone at it, maybe a little more strategically than some transitions we found ourselves in. So there's the planned or proactive.
And an example of that, like for us, we were on a 5-year cycle when we lived overseas for 20 years. So we were 4 years on the field, and then 1 year in the States to do budget and all of that stuff. And then 4 on and 1 off again, 4 on and 1 off. So that was pretty much this plan. We knew this cycle was going to happen that way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then of course, we all know there's those, what we sometimes call rug pulled out transitions, right? The unplanned or reactive transitions that we find ourselves in, where
like COVID
and all of the things surrounding this time of and this season of life that's impacted everybody, all of us in some way or another. So this is just
stuff we didn't see coming.
Yeah, it's stuff we didn't see coming, that's for sure. Unplanned and reactive transitions. And then there's the internal. Something's going on, something I remember trying to explain to friends and colleagues when I was in this place of processing an internal transition, thinking, imagining, dreaming, brainstorming what could be, but really having no plan for that at that time. this was while we were still overseas and looking towards something else. But there's those times when we're just really trying to process what's going on internally, and maybe nothing externally is changing at the moment, or it will change, but we feel like maybe something's around the corner, but we're not quite sure what that could be. So,
and then there's the internal transition that happens connected to the planned or the unplanned, right? Sometimes it starts externally, but then it's always going to cause an internal shift of some sort, or multiple internal shifts.
Right. So, yeah. So let's take a little poll here this time, if we could. And you're going to see something come up, I think, here. What kind of transition are you currently experiencing? And I know it's sometimes hard to pick just one, but you're going to have to here. If you want to add something to that in the chat, that's good too. And we'd love to hear what that might be. But okay, we got some coming up. They're looking pretty even.
Yeah.
Huh?
Like a horse race.
Yeah. I love watching the bars.
Yeah. Looks like planned is in the lead now.
Right.
Somebody mentioned in the chat they're living in both 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A, B, C, all of the above is maybe that we should have had the the last choice.
We could have had all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we have
52% planned and proactive, 22% for unplanned reactive, and 25% for internal.
All right.
Okay.
Well, maybe some of this, maybe this signals to us that maybe some of this unplanned reactive COVID type of transition is starting to fade out a little bit, and we can get down, and some people are at least some of us are getting down to actually the planning and intentional, proactive piece around this.
Just because we're able to again.
Exactly. Okay. Good. I'm not sure what happened after the poll. Our slides froze up again, so I'm going to have to stop and restart that. Hold on.
There we go.
Okay.
So what kind of transition are you currently experiencing? We just did that with the poll. And transition is more than just change, but a change that involves an inner component requiring an inner reorientation. So this kind of speaks to what we were just saying. So often, whether it's the planned or unplanned kind, there's going to be an inner component. Sometimes we don't get to that inner component or realize what the inner component is right at the start or in the early stages, just because sometimes the early stages take so much logistics. They take a lot of head work, right, to get that transition rolling. But the inner work is happening. We're just not tuned into it yet. In other words, change of outward circumstances might be the trigger for transition taking place in an instant, but the adaptive inner work takes time. So yeah, something that, when I'm thinking of something that takes place in an instant, I'm thinking of our first year on the field when Tim's dad died. And then just, that a death is something that just happens and everything shifts just instantly. And yeah, we didn't have time to do any heart work because we were just trying to get on a plane and, get back in time, like basically before he passed, but we didn't make it. So, then basically it was weeks later when we were back in Tajikistan and finally like the dust settled that we're like, wow, grief, here we go, because we finally had time, that inner work that takes time. So a lot of times that feels like chaos, right? All that messy middle in between, things being topsy-turvy, rug pulled out, like Tim calls it, creates all that chaos, feels super confusing. I love this though, Henry Miller. Confusion is a word we have invented for an order which is not yet understood. Great. I don't understand, this to me has some hope for an order which is not yet understood. So maybe there will be order and maybe I will understand it. But for right now, there's just confusion and chaos. I love that guy. Then there's uncertainty. Comes with chaos so often. Uncertainty. So this is, so that's unknown. For uncertain, we don't know what's ahead. And the idea here is that this could be fertile ground for creativity. And we get mixed signals, some from our old way of being and some from a way of being that is still unclear to us. Nothing feels solid. Everything is up for grabs. Yet for that very reason, it's a time when we sometimes feel that anything is possible. So the in-between time can be a very creative time too. It's an opportunity for creativity. It's a choice, right, that we would make to see it as that opportunity for creativity, which honestly in the messy middle is hard, to see that opportunity. But because we're still up at the top there, nothing feels solid, everything is up for grabs. So we're kind of, where's the firm something I can grab onto, and we can't find it.
And I think that we really, if we're aware of this, just being aware of this fact that the transition I'm currently in, everything feels so shaky and so much uncertainty and unpredictability around this, and yet this is a place of creativity. And if I can just stay aware of that and take advantage of those moments. And I know that it's sometimes so hard to actually grab hold of those moments, those creative moments, and take time to really maybe reflect on something God is saying, go deeper in a conversation with somebody around something you're experiencing, rather than, again, going back to that river analogy, rather than just, I've got to get to the other side here. There's creativity in the journey, in the process. And I think oftentimes we can miss that if we're just kind of, full steam ahead kind of, approach. And so, well, that's why I think we just love to do the counseling and the coaching around with people in transition, with groups or individuals, because it's just there's so much there can be so many creative moments in these times.
Potential for that.
Potential.
So that's The Way of Transition. It's a book written by Bridges that we like. You'll see some quotes here. I also just wanted to say that obviously a lot of people joined in to this workshop tonight because they're in transition or anticipating a transition. But we also know there's people joining that they work with people in transition, and hopefully we'll find some resources here tonight. But instead of just kind of thinking about all of the people out there that we might, depending on our line of work, be supporting through transition, I would say take some of these and think of a personal transition, even if you're not in transition now, something you've walked through in the past, and kind of feel and picture that, and it'll kind of help this to make sense, or give you those hooks to hang it on, kind of thing.
So again, Bridges has some good ones here. Although I didn't know how I was going to manage it, I knew that dealing successfully with the transition was going to require me to accept uncertainty as my new reality.
I don't want to accept uncertainty as my new reality usually.
We kind of fight against that, and we kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, but
I like things that are certain.
Right,
I
right.
like things I can count on.
and another word we might use to frame the transition season we're in is instability. And if when in doubt, go to Oswald Chambers, right? I mean, he was a great one. So to be certain of God means that we're uncertain in all of our ways. We do not know what a day may bring forth. This is generally said with a sigh of sadness. It should be rather an expression of breathless expectation. We are uncertain of the next step, but we are certain of God. Immediately we abandon to God and we do the duty that lies nearest. He packs our life with surprises all the time. So what's the duty that lies nearest in your transition? Is it packing those bags? Is it processing, debriefing, unpacking the hard and the difficult in the transition, whatever that might be, and finding those moments of surprise when God is there in that moment, and even in the uncertainty. So for this first part of our time here, we came up with a resolution that we'd like to leave you with here. It might resonate with you. Let's resolve to redefine what it means to be certain. And so if you take anything away from this first part, this might be just and to form that into a question, how can I redefine certainty in this season I'm in? What are some ways to reframe this season I'm in so that I can make sense out of the uncertainty? There's a lot of ways to ask that question, right? But I think you guys get where we're going with that. So what does this represent? What does this transition represent to you? And maybe if you'd like to throw some things out there in the chat, do any of these words resonate with you? There's a fill in the blank there if something else comes up. What does this transition season represent to you? Or like Eve said, if there's something you're still kind of processing, it's happened, but you're still processing and working through that, what might be a word or a feeling word? Get out your feelings wheel if you're familiar with the feelings wheel.
And sometimes if you look at that list too, like, it's not usually, or I'm going to say ever, but usually is a better word, just be one of those things, right? Sometimes a transition is going to be everything on that list and more, because there's just so many facets to it and such a mix of the thoughts and the feelings and everything that's going with it. And so, and that's the thing too, that instability, the word from earlier, it's not a great word. We use it to, describe, things that are, anyway, it's not a great word usually, but if we feel that way, if we feel unstable, if you just look at this list, like there's a good reason. We're in the middle of a lot of really hard stuff and a lot of really good stuff too, potentially. So yeah, it's okay. It's normalizing it, is the nice word, the nice way to say that. It's all right.
Getting some responses from people about that. Yeah, just relating to some of those words: uncertainty, fear, opportunity, but unwelcomed, exhausting, too much like childhood, disillusionment.
Yeah.
A lot of hard
I'm
stuff.
also getting, anxiety, grief, ambivalence.
Sorry, what was that last word?
Ambivalence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, ambivalence is a great, unstable, uncertain, like, I have no clue. And yet as we step into new things and, make these big decisions and make these big moves, for us, it was 94 when we decided like, oh yeah, let's move to Tajikistan with our, we were pregnant. We didn't even have a kid yet, you know, and it was just like, what? And we had no clue literally what we just signed up for, you know? But yeah. And there was nobody to tell us what we signed up for either. So the 90s were awesome for that. But this lens through which you view this transition is unique. So now we have lots of resources. That's why we're sharing this workshop. That's why we're recommending different books that you'll see on here, different authors, because we have lots of resources, but there's just one, you know, I can read, Tim and I read a lot of the same books, and I'm sharing what's impacting me. He's sharing something completely different. It's the same book. We can even read the same line, but it's just this. We have these a different lens, you know, that we're viewing it through, and recognizing that others around you have their unique perspectives as well, can be so helpful, because if you're doing any kind of transition with a partner or with your family, and then of course it's involving the wider circle too. It's involving your parents, your siblings, you know, whoever else. Yeah, it's affecting other people. They all have their unique perspectives. So it's this conversation that we should be having, hopefully, with those people. The ripple effect.
Yeah, and we're never going to know, obviously, that perspective of the other person next to us, or in our family unit, or on our team, in our community, unless we have those conversations. And so such a great time to put on our listening ears and really have those conversations with others, so that we are aware of how that person next to us is processing the transition. Are they, we might say, we talk about grieving a little bit, you know, how are they grieving? Are they kind of pre-grieving this, or are they more of a post-griever? Is that gonna show up later? Mm-hmm. How are we going to talk about that and have those conversations around some of that? Okay. Funny little quote from Tennessee Williams. There's a time for departure, even when there's no place to go. And COVID has done that to a lot of us, right? There's no place to go. Wise Solomon said there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. That gives me hope in times of uncertainty, when there doesn't seem like anywhere to go or anywhere to turn. There's a God who knows the perfect time for my departure, or my staying, or my arrival, or whatever that looks like. So also that we need anchors, right, in transition, and we have found the greatest anchor of all is our obviously number one, our God and our relationship with Him. And secondly, our marriage, and if you're single out there, good friendships and good solid relationships with teammates or colleagues and friends that give us a good foothold and our anchors. But there's always in transition the tricky part, right, of being able to move, make progress, and letting go. There's that process of letting go and taking hold of what's new, or leaving behind and letting go and taking hold of what's new. So this quote we liked from Bridges as well: as rock climbers try to move only one hand or foot at a time, keeping the other 3 points of contact with the rock solid. So the person in transition will usually do well to use the rest of his or her life as a series of holds while making a transition elsewhere. And that for me just showed up very practically in just in reminding myself, what are those things that are, we could call them non-negotiables. All of this is changing, but to keep me well-footed, grounded, this has got to remain. Whether that's your quiet time, coffee and quiet time in your morning, or date nights with your spouse, or things that you can do. Kind of, maybe you have to mix them up a little bit and get creative, but they are things, even in, you know, quote unquote chaotic transitions, that we can often find ways to keep doing, to keep us grounded. So move into part 2 here, and talk about expectations.
Okay. Expectations, this part that we added came along because of a book called Expectations and Burnout. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And as I read that book, I think 2010 was the published date, and I'm reading comments that, because there's parts of each chapter where there's like little sound bites from women who took the survey that the book was kind of built around. And I'm reading things and I'm like, oh, I've thought that, I've said that even before, you know? And so kind of back to the normalizing thing, I realized I am not the first person who has felt this way, or the first person who's thought this, or the first person who's been thrown by, you know, X, Y, or Z. It's happened to a lot of people all over the planet. But a lot of times when you're tucked away somewhere, like a small developing country, you just feel super isolated, right? And COVID's been great for adding to isolation too. This shirt was here in Turkey, and if you've ever shopped at, you know, bazaars or different places, this is one of our family pastimes, is to find the most ridiculous saying on a t-shirt. And you don't have to buy the t-shirt, but you can take a picture of it, because then everybody can get a good laugh. But yeah, rule number 1, never expect anything from anybody. And if you could, if this is your rule number 1, then you will never be disappointed, because you're never expecting anything. But I don't know anyone who's able to keep rule number 1, because if we're human, we have some kind of expectation or hope, we also call it, or this is the way I want this to turn out. This is what I'm picturing. We're kind of built that way to like think of it, imagine it, and you know, plan for it to turn out a certain way. And what happens when we have an expectation that isn't met, we usually have a feeling that follows, like disappointment or frustration, or there's annoyance. There's all kinds of different things that can follow. And again, that's pretty normal life. But what happens is day after day, if there's an expectation set that's high, and the expectation is set and it's not met, and that happens day after day, it feels like failure, because a lot of times it's an expectation that, you know, I think I've got to achieve that. I need to hit that bar, hit that benchmark, and then I can't. And then I'm failing day after day after day. And often burnout is the result. And as you know, or may not know, the symptoms of burnout line up pretty spot on with the symptoms of a mild to moderate depression. A lot of times it's called burnout, or we use this word because it's a nicer word for global workers to use, so they don't have to say the word depression, because, you know, depression is just for who, you know, like the weak or people who don't pray enough or whatever, I don't know. But sorry, just gotta put that out there, keeping it real. Yeah. But I'm fine with the word burnout too, but I think, yeah, let's go ahead and just, you know, look at what that is. It just means I've been trying and failing, and now I'm really feeling terrible about myself because I can't, you know, hit that high mark. So where do expectations come from? And this is all straight from the book Expectations and Burnout. Bliss and Innenberg, it's hard to say her name, are the authors, and they were cited there. But the book boils it down to 6 main sources of expectations. That's me, me for myself, my company or my sending agency, my community back home, that could be family, friends back home, my community on the field, that could be your team or your colleagues in your country of service, and then my host culture. So that's the folks that actually live in the country where you are, and then God. And the book also looks at the actual expectation and then the perceived expectation, right? So it would take a long time to unpack that, but we can just say, you know, like for host culture, you have to live in a culture long enough to understand what the expectation is. Like, for instance, in Tajikistan, you have to wear a white scarf on your head if you go to a funeral. That's just, it's so easy to know that, because if you go to any funeral, the first funeral you go to, if you don't have the white scarf, they hand you one. They say, here, put this on, so it's like, okay, I get it. Now I can always wear that white scarf, but there's tons of things about a host culture that are all these nuances that you're not going to get until you've lived there for quite some time, or unless you have a really great local friend who's giving you all the little ins and outs and all those little tidbits, right? So anyway, you can see what a big project it is to even figure out, what are my expectations of me, myself, and my company, and my community back home, my community, and feel my host culture, and God. And that's just a big pile of a lot of times that can feel heavy, right? That can feel impossible. That can feel, I don't know, you fill in with your own words there, because there's just like so many people expecting so much of us. But then honestly, for me personally, for those 5 other areas, I'm always going to say, oh, okay, I'll just take it up a notch anyway, and expect more of myself really than other people might, just because, yeah, that's just where I come from, a place that's like, come on, you can do better. Or, if you get the B+, just study harder next time and you'll get the A, kind of thing. Sports did that for me growing up. You need to, run faster, jump higher, try harder, that kind of thing. So yeah, that message is pretty woven into the fabric of me.
So why are we talking about expectations and burnout in a transitions way?
Well, that is a great question, Tim. Because there's so many unknown expectations as we head into a transition, right? And we want people to recognize, we're hoping people will recognize that that's putting a lot of pressure. Anxiety can be a product of that, because it's like all these unknowns and all these expectations, and then I'm going to try to meet them all. I'm going to meet everybody's expectations and go above and beyond, and then not actually be able to find a healthy balance in the middle of it, right? I'm going to use all my resources. I'm going to, just run out of resources. And so the other thing is, you can ask. We're encouraging you to ask if you don't know. So this is a good one for your community on the field. If you're headed somewhere new, you can ask things like, is somebody going to help me find a flat, or help me find housing? And they say, no, you're going to be on your own. You're going to find housing on your own. Okay, got it. Is somebody going to help me figure out how to shop at the bazaar? Yeah. Somebody's going to take you to the bazaar, 2 trips to the bazaar, and then you're on your own. Okay, got it. So just ask some questions. Feel free to, and please ask lots of questions as you head into your transition, so that you have clear expectations, or more clear expectations. Yeah, what needs to be communicated to whom? Oops. Okay. And is that just speaking to what we were just talking about?
I think we've kind of already touched on that. So the next question, and we kind of maybe touched on that a little bit. So
good. And so just to be clear on this, what's the correlation is if you can lower your expectations, you will set yourself up for not using all your resources because it'll be a bar you can hit. And lowering your expectations, some people have a brain that translates that to like, oh, I would feel lazy, or I would be underachieving, or I would be doing less than I'm capable of doing. But it's not any of those things. It's not lazy. It's not, you're a slacker or whatever. It's like you're just going to be more realistic about what you're headed into and what kind of resources you have. You've got 24 hours in a day and X amount of energy, so yeah. So what does need to be adjusted, tweaked, or completely overhauled? And I would say that comes from lowering the expectation and kind of being more realistic about what that is and asking some good questions. Who do you know that you can ask so you can be gathering more information that's going to help you with that realistic expectation? So another transition resolution is to visit and revisit your expectations. So just feel free to keep circling back to expectations and keep those conversations rolling, because even at that rate, when we moved here to Istanbul, we didn't realize how long it takes to drive, get across the city, transport across the city, and so yeah, when there was something to do, we're like, oh yeah, we can do that. And we'd commit like 6 hours to something, but 6 hours worth of doing something. There was a refugee center across the city where I was doing counseling. That actually took me about 10 hours. To do 6 hours of counseling there was a 10-hour day with the transport, and so it's like, okay, so now I know what that is. And instead of going there twice a week, I know I can go there once a week or whatever, readjust as needed. Yeah.
Lisa or Amber, are we getting any thoughts around this, particularly in the area of expectations and burnout, or or should we move on?
No questions coming in, but great invite to everybody if you want to.
Yes, feel free.
Now.
Yes.
Feel free.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about the work of transition. We all know that transition is hard work, or it's going to be hard work at some point. And so there's always that place where kind of the rubber hits the road, right? And we have to do. There's the doing piece. There's the hard work of actual navigating this transition. And transition, on the other hand, is the process of letting go of the way things used to be and taking hold of the way they subsequently become. In between the letting go and the taking hold again, there is a chaotic but potentially creative, again, going back to the creative place, neutral zone, when things aren't the old way, but aren't really a new way either. This 3-phase process, ending, neutral zone, beginning again, is transition. So transition requires a lot of things and involves a lot of things, but it often requires a shift in energy expenditure. So where we've been putting our energy and efforts sometimes takes a dramatic shift, right? In terms of where we got to start shifting our energy and focus now at this point in the transition. For example, I've been moving along. Okay, now it's time, for a particular transition that our transitions, and we've made a few of them over our lifetime, but particularly our cross-cultural transitions and when we lived overseas is, we start looking at a timeline. Okay, we're 6 months out here of actually maybe making a move somewhere else, whether that's within the country or outside of the country or going on furlough or whatever that looked like. And we're going to have to start looking at doing some things differently. So there's a shift that has to take place. What happens a lot of times is we just keep we almost get into this, I don't know, we can get into this denial mindset, or just like there's no way to shift or change anything. So I'm just going to go ahead, keep going. And we know a transition is coming. We know a move is going to take place, but we really don't prepare for it well. And we don't shift our focus and energies in certain directions that we may need to in order to successfully navigate the transition. And there's tools, a lot of tools around that we can use for that. And we'll be able to share with you here shortly, and also offer you some ways to get into. We have a resource packet we would like to share with you around some transition tools. But it contains opportunities for new beginnings, and it's a place where God is always at work. And then there's that outward piece of transition, okay, and that's the doing piece. And so we know that there's planning that goes into this. There's the doing, there's the preparing. We talked about expectations. There's really examining what our expectations, having those hard conversations around that. There's bringing closure, handing off, and there's a couple things that we have worked with. We've used ourselves as far as tools called Raft and Cabin, and we'll tell you more about that. But now just kind of this broad sweep, we're talking about the outward actions of transition, but then there's the inward and the internal piece of rest, getting the proper rest that we need, and maybe more time to reflect, or carve out time to reflect and process. Maybe there's forgiveness that needs to be offered, reconciliation, grieving losses, taking time to grieve those losses, what those look like. Are those losses in terms of relationships, just a season of life, the things you'll miss, the places that you'll miss, or your family members, certain family members will miss, grieving losses, capturing those insights, going back to the creativity piece, and what the opportunities for growth and creativity and transition. And then there can be time to really clarify what our core values are. I find that this is a big part of what I do in my coaching. As I coach those who are going through transition, there's often a time, especially during big shifts and big pivots, that we go to this place of what really matters, what has mattered in the past, how is that changing? What are some non-negotiables that I'm taking with me into this new season in terms of my values and what I believe strongly in, and what are some things that need to shift, or maybe some things that I'm starting to see. I didn't realize these are values for me, or I've kind of neglected these values in this past season, but I want to prioritize them and lean into them during this next season. So values clarification is a really big piece of that work of transition. Always good to celebrate victories as well, and to celebrate the wins. There's always those wins that we can celebrate, and taking time to do that is important. And identity and purpose is another area, a rich place to mine for in terms of processing transition. Who am I? Who have I become in this past season? What am I bringing into this next season in terms of my identity and purpose? How do I want that to become more clear or more understood by those who I'll be working with or serving with in this next season? We'll talk about this transition curve.
Yeah, and this is just a tool that we love to use, and we'll just show you kind of how you can use it just for your own personal processing, but also really encourage you to use this with family members or team members or friends, because it works so well as a way to kind of bounce your ideas off of each other. And I love this curve and all parts of it, but the neutral zone part, as we go here and look at the curve, you'll see that what I usually call it messy middle instead of neutral zone, you can call it chaos. I had one client call it the pit of hell. So you can just choose whatever works for you there. But neutral, because like the emptiness and chaos and those things don't really go with neutral, you know? So anyway, but what you do here is you just kind of looking at the descriptive words that are there and deciding which of those words resonate for you in the transition that you might be walking through, or if you're thinking back to one that you've already walked through, or you're, you know, wherever you're at with it. A lot of times something is happening on both sides and down in the messy middle. So some of the things on the ending side will catch your eye, new beginnings will catch your eye, something down in the messy middle might too. And that is because a lot of times it's happening all at once, meaning our heart is kind of going back and forth and all around, and our head is going back and forth with the different things. So if, let's say we live in the US right now and we're planning to move overseas. Well, there's endings happening with our US side of things, and there's new beginnings happening with the overseas side of stuff. And then there's a bunch of messy middle happening connected to all of it. And so it, unfortunately, you know, I wish it was, there used to be these transition models. I mean, they're still out there, but they look like an Excel sheet and they have columns, you know, and I used to use that one a long time ago, or ones like that, but then it gives you this idea that you're going to move through it in stages, like an Excel sheet. You got to go column by column, right? And I'm like, yeah, I love that. I want that. I want the column and then the next column and the next column. I know. Because that's like how my brain says things should work. But when I came across this one, I was just like, you know what, this is so much more like the real deal, because I can feel disidentification and disorientation, and the next minute feel anticipation and some reorientation happening. Like how does that happen, you know? And then the chaos and the anxiety pops up, and it's just, yeah, all over the place. Again, let's just normalize the instability. Let's just know that that's just part of the deal. And what I've done on this, and actually I see some of our teammates on screen that did this with us, so this is kind of fun. We were working as a team. It was 7 of us, and we used this model together at our last team retreat when we were all going to be together, because then one of the couples was going to go on a home leave, and then about 6 months after that we were moving back to the States, and then one of the other teammates was going too. So we did this with our last team retreat all together, like I said, and I just kept going with that same transition curve. And I still have it actually it's in my journal back in the room, because what I did was I just kept dates, and every couple of weeks I would just get it out again, and I would just, whatever popped out that resonated, I would put a date, and I would put maybe like the situation that was happening. And then I just added to it. For 18 months, I used the same transition curve. And so it was with our teammates on this side, and then it was with the new beginnings on the other side, all the endings, all the new beginnings, and all that messy middle. So something like that, where you're tracking with your own thoughts and feelings, and then please share those with somebody. Yeah, Tim and I bounced them off of each other. We bounced them off of our teammates. You know, just, yeah, then you have some of the shared language that can be really helpful. And you're not just cold turkey going to someone, hey, I want to tell you about, you know, this inner realignment that's happening. And they're like, yeah, wait, what? You know, they don't even get it. So
So should we take a poll here?
Just to get an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring that poll up then.
So where are you, where are you on the transition curve? Endings, neutral zone, or new beginnings?
But wait, you said we could be
I
every
know.
place at one time.
We should have had A, B, C, and all of the above. So I guess the question should be, where do you see yourself more like which side of it or which part of it resonates more with you at this moment. Again, like we said, it can change moment to moment. So.
And if you'd like to expand on that, just go ahead and put something in the chat. If one of those words on the curve resonates with you, feel free to put that in there. We'd love to kind of see where that takes us as well.
And the other thing I do with mine is I add in words, other descriptors, you know, that just aren't on there. So just, yeah, feel free to personalize it, of course, and mark it all up. And yeah, okay, looks like we are done with the poll. And it looks like that neutral zone, messy middle, chaos space is the big winner.
Yeah, so it looks like by about half of you guys chose the neutral zone,
Exactly,
messy middle
50%.
space. Yeah. Are there any things coming up in the chat? Any descriptive words here?
Yeah. Some people are commenting they're in the new beginning side, but feeling in the neutral zone. Maybe the feelings are more in line with the neutral zone. There's some anxiety and discovery kind of at the same time. Somebody here is talking about a major and unexpected and unwanted transition back to a place they didn't want to go. Was hoping it would be new and exciting. But since it's taking him back to a place he didn't want to go, finding it a lot more difficult, a lot less energy. Yeah, so I feel like I'm trying to force myself through a transition I know must take place, but not one I'm excited about. Staying motivated to take the next step each day is really difficult. Any insights?
Yeah.
He's asked, that's a question at the end, sorry.
Oh, wait, say it again, Lisa.
Just asking if you have any insights for, I guess kind of that the question is, it's a transition that's not wanted, he's not exciting, but trying to enter into it and to stay motivated to take the next steps to get through it well. Any ideas about how best to do that?
Okay, that's Amber. Nicole, you want to share your chats and then we can go back to that question?
Sure. A couple of words that stuck out were like low productivity and reorientation really resonated. Somebody said that right now they feel like they're in the ending, which surprised them because they felt like they should be in the new beginnings, or like at least in the neutral, but they can't seem to get to the new beginnings. Somebody else just made a comment that this model fits with the scriptural one of the life, death, and resurrection. Yeah, the disorientation and then reorientation. So.
Yeah.
And that just real quick on that before we answer the question, like we do get stuck or feel stuck sometimes in some spot on this, and that actually is pretty normal too, just because, especially I would say when it's heavy on the logistics of like making a big move and figuring out, you know, fundraising or all these different things, we're not taking time often for the heart process part of it. And so we get kind of stuck because we're busy doing all the head work. And then that is just our encouragement right there, to take time to do some of the heart work so that you don't get so stuck, you know? And even again, having this in my prayer journal for all those months, I would just sit down and I would say, okay, 5 minutes. I didn't want to be overcome with grief. Let's say I didn't want to spend an hour working through a transition. I wanted to just weave it into my quiet time. So I would just say, okay, 5 minutes, like go ahead, heart, and you know, do your thing on the transition. And yeah, sometimes it would turn into 10 or 15, but then I would say, okay, that, you know, that's what we're going to do for today, but tomorrow we can do some more. So just trying to not get stuck and try not to get the beaver dam with all the sticks piled up, you know, that backs up the river kind of thing. So just take it in bite-sized pieces at a heart level, and it is less overwhelming at that rate, you know. Yeah, you want
Yeah.
to talk about the staying energized and motivated?
Well, yeah, I think on the motivation piece, it could potentially be partly because we haven't processed what's behind us and really taken enough time to unpack some of that. We say in coaching, in the coaching world where, coaching is more forward looking, but the debriefing piece is so important. So I often go back to, have you had some counseling around that piece, grieving any potential trauma around that past experience that's causing the feelings of lack of motivation, any potential relationships that weren't resolved, or whatever that might be. That's, again, going back to that word stuck, that's just a place to explore. And I think that but it's certainly not uncommon to be the both and piece, and I think it actually, maybe to normalize it, it should be both and. At some point in this big transition, you should be grieving losses, celebrating the wins, bringing closure, but also having feelings of inner realignment and anticipation and planning for the next thing and dreaming around that. And they can both be happening simultaneously in different spaces and in different conversations and in our own hearts and minds. So, but that's certainly just to normalize that. Yeah, it can be very hard to go back to a place that's has a lot of disappointment there. There's been disappointment and things that have, there's reasons for that. And so, but I would say also just let's explore what could be, and let's open up the conversation and look at what could be, what needs to be shifted or tweaked or overhauled, like we talked about earlier, that could set you up for success in this next season, even though it may not be your first choice. I'm reading a book, it's really good right now. It just came to my head, but it's called, I think it's called Singing in Babylon. And I can't remember the author, but it's all about navigating second choice situations in our life. This wasn't my first choice. And the whole book is around Daniel in Babylon, Daniel and his buddies in Babylon. And that was a second choice existence for them, but how they leveraged and took advantage of that transition to be so successful in so many ways in the next season they were in. So.
And I know we have to, manage the time and kind of move on, but I did want to say one more thing about this. Do you want to look up the author just so you can throw it out there? One more thing about if we have secular jobs, we choose to, maybe move to a new city, take a new job in a new city or whatever. That would 100% potentially be 100% our own decision. But in overseas work, so often other people are either making decisions for us or they're weighing in heavily on decisions that are made. And so we're not saying, oh, I'm going to take a job in Cincinnati now. Somebody is saying, no, you're not taking a job in Cincinnati. You're doing this instead, kind of thing. You know what I mean? There's decision-making protocols that we're all following. And so that changes it up so much that's what this, the comment in the chat is reminding me of, like a place I didn't want to go to, or I didn't want to go to now, however it was put, because it is it Jeff Lucas? Somebody put it up already.
Yeah, someone put it up there already.
There it is. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, anyway, that takes extra work around that, I would say, at a heart and head level, because if someone made a decision that we don't necessarily agree with, or we weren't ready for the timing of it, that I think is an extra added challenge for sure. So this is just a really helpful illustration that can kind of help you picture You know, what can I set aside, or how to prioritize things, basically. If you can think of things as either glass balls or rubber balls, meaning a rubber ball, if you drop it, it will bounce and it will roll across the room and there will be no damage done. A glass ball, if you drop it, it will shatter. So you're thinking of big rocks is another metaphor that people use. And really, we can only have about 3 big rocks usually. Some people say they can do 4 or 5. So pick that, you know, is it faith, family, you know, work? What is it? You know, your big rocks, what are your glass balls? And those are the things you want to hang on to and take extra special care of, and then go ahead and drop a bunch of your rubber balls. Drop as many of those as you can. They're not going to break. They're going to be sitting on the floor later in another season. You can pick them back up maybe, and nobody's hopefully going to get hurt by the broken glass, right? Okay, here we are at Raft. Again, this is a whole workshop. Reconciliation, affirmation, farewell, and think destination. And this is just a way to help you think of what needs to be done before I get on this raft and sail to another place. Is there anyone that I need to reconcile with or offer reconciliation to? Is there anybody that I need to affirm or be affirmed by? And these are all conversations or potential conversations. People that I want to say farewell to, that would be people, places, pets, favorite restaurants, you name it. We said many fearful farewells to Iskander.
Oh, yes.
And then think destination, where am I headed, you know? And so again, each one of these needs to be unpacked, and I'm sorry, we don't have time to spend adequate time on those. These come from, and I think I see you in the workshop, Ruth, but thank you for this great resource that it's hidden for us, but it's, can you find it? Yeah, Lisa, will you read the book title for us?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's from Third Culture Kids, Growing Up Among Worlds by Pollock and Rankin and
Yeah.
Pollock.
Yeah, so thanks for that great resource. The subtitle is what I can never come up with on my own. So grab that book and you will see what all rafting is about. But that's just a great way to step through a transition using that. The CABIN acronym can be helpful for people that are staying. And so if you are on the staying side of a transition, you're seeing a teammate off or you're seeing a loved one off and they're headed out, but you're going to be staying put, then count the cost, acknowledge the losses, bless those who leave, invest in your community or continue to invest in your community, and nest or stay well are good reminders, good strategies for the people that stay behind. And again, there's a lot to unpack there that you will be able to find when you look up that resource. Okay, we are headed into part 4 with just a few minutes left. And this is our reflection and wrap up. The sun just set, so I'm going to put our light on.
So as we wrap up and reflect a little bit, what if, where's the potential here? What if this current transition you are in was specifically for you? And again, going back to where we started, to reframe transition in ways that are purposeful, powerful, and ways that really bring perspective of what is God's purpose here. So what if this current transition you are in was specifically designed, tailored uniquely for you by God, your creator and your sustainer and your provider in this season. And I think that's where we really want to just kind of stop and reflect here a little bit and take that with us. What might God be up to in the hard, in the challenging, in the good, in the, you know, on the high points and in the low points? What's his invitation to us? And so we are going to leave these questions for you as a reflective exercise that you can take with you or actually have access to. And so these, you know, you don't have to take a screenshot if you don't want to or anything like that, because we're going to give you a free access to this resource folder for transition. Again, a kind of a compilation of some things we've shared tonight, things you can use, reflective exercises. I think we put the raft and the cabin in there, and there's some great little tools, and we're going to be adding to the folder as well. So we encourage you to get access to that, which we will share. There's a little Bible study that I put together for 4 attitudes that can help guide us through transition. That will also be in the resource packet. But here's the link to the resource packet that you can sign up to get and have access to. And if you have any issues with that or getting access to that, you can email me. I know that you will be able to email Olive Tree or connect with Olive Tree as well if you have any questions. Lisa or Amber, will that go out? Can that go out in any other way to?
Yeah, we're going to email this to everybody who has signed up for it. So if you don't happen to get it in an email in the next few days, feel free to get a hold of us, but we'll email it out.
Perfect. Great. Well, that's a wrap, but I don't know how much time we have. If there's a question or two out there, we're happy to stay on and answer any questions or share a little bit more via the chat, but we'll just kind of hand it back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, feel free to send in questions. I have, one I wonder about as you're talking, I wonder if other people are wondering about too, on that transition curve, which is such a helpful resource. I wonder, I think in some of those old Excel models you talked about, Eve, there was one of the things that was kind of rigid about them is they had time frames on them. And I know that those aren't so able to be so rigid, but in terms of transition and time frame, I think that's something people often wonder about. What's normal for adjustment, and when do you know you're stuck and maybe need some help in that sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll just talk about stages of grief for a second, or just because that's something people know about, is like a lot of times you're going to cycle through stages of grief. Like again, I like the spiral, like a coil kind of metaphor, because you're coming back around to the same thing, but if the coil's turned up, it's an upward spiral, so you're feeling it again, but it's not as intense. And I feel like transition is like that too. You're going to cycle back through things because sometimes, like a text or even a random, it can be a smell, it can be a song that pops up on your playlist or whatever. It's going to bring a memory, or it's going to open a conversation. If it's like a text from a person that, you're like, wow, why am I feeling, this disengagement right now or disoriented right now? Well, it's because of something that just happened. So the time frame thing, Lisa, to answer that question, is it's all over the board, because you do kind of feel the intensity decreasing, but then your heart can still cycle back through things, and even this, like us being here at this 5-year mark, and being here with all the kids, like I've cycled through a bunch more grief and processed through a bunch more grief, but I know I'll do some more of it when we get back to the States, because these days have been so full and fun. There's been a lot of fun things too. And my heart doesn't want to camp out in the grieving and the loss part, so it's like, well, I'm not still stuck there, but when it pops up, it's actually good to just let it pop and let it, cycle through and all of that. But then, yeah, if I was still feeling the same intensity of grief that I felt 5 years ago when I left here, then that would be a big red flag, obviously. So I think just give yourself a good 6 months to walk through a transition season. And then if you're feeling stuck at the end of that 6 months, like I haven't moved down the river at all or moved through this at all, definitely bring somebody, or I would bring someone in earlier than that. I would just say transition is pretty traumatic, so just go ahead and get all the support you can for all of it, start to finish, because it's